There's a moment in every relationship that most people never recognize while it's happening. It doesn't arrive with a fight. It doesn't arrive with a conversation. It doesn't even arrive with silence. It arrives in the space between two people who used to feel something and then, quietly, one of them stopped. And the strange part? The person who stopped feeling it usually can't explain when it happened. They just know that one day, the feeling was gone. This is the part of attraction that psychology rarely talks about openly. Not the beginning where everything feels electric and uncertain, but the middle. The slow, invisible erosion that happens long before anyone says the words out loud. Most people think relationships end. The truth is most relationships don't end. They dissolve. Slowly, quietly, often without either person fully understanding why. And the person who gets replaced? They're usually the one who did everything right, who showed up consistently, who was kind, reliable, patient, and present. They were, in the most traditional sense, the good one. So why does it still happen to them? That's exactly what we're going to break down today. To understand this pattern, you first have to understand something about how human emotion works inside a relationship. When two people first meet, there's a specific chemical and psychological experience that takes over. Uncertainty plays a massive role in that early attraction. Not knowing exactly how someone feels, not being completely sure where things are going. That uncertainty, as uncomfortable as it is, actually produces emotional engagement. The brain is wired to pay attention to what it hasn't fully figured out yet. Psychologists call it the reward prediction mechanism. When the outcome of something is uncertain, the brain releases dopamine not just when the reward arrives, but in anticipation of it. The chase, the wondering, the not knowing all of it is neurologically stimulating. Now here's where the nice guy enters the picture. He sees someone he cares about. He wants to protect her from any kind of emotional uncertainty. He wants her to feel safe, valued, and chosen. So he removes the uncertainty entirely. He texts back quickly. He makes his feelings clear early. He shows up without hesitation. And for a brief period, she appreciates it. But here's what nobody tells him. What feels like security to him can slowly start to feel like predictability to her. And predictability over time has a very specific emotional effect on attraction. It quiets it, not intentionally, not cruelly, not even consciously, it simply quiets it. Let's walk through how this actually unfolds, because it never happens all at once. In the beginning, she's genuinely happy. He's reliable. He's consistent. He never plays games. She can count on him. And compared to whatever emotional chaos she may have experienced before, this feels refreshing. Weeks pass, maybe a few months, and somewhere in that window, something very subtle begins to shift. It starts with response energy. The way she responds to his messages starts to change, not dramatically, just slightly. Shorter replies, a little less enthusiasm. A few hours later than before. He notices, but he tells himself she's just busy. He adjusts, maybe he messages less, or maybe he messages more, trying to fill the gap. Either way, he's reacting, and she can feel it. Then it moves into the quality of conversation. They still talk. They still see each other. But the conversations start to lose a certain quality. The depth, the curiosity, the sense that she's genuinely interested in what he has to say. She's still there, but she's not fully present. And then, and this is the stage most people completely miss, she starts finding emotional stimulation somewhere else. Not necessarily in another person. Sometimes it's a friendship that suddenly becomes more active, a project she throws herself into, a social life that quietly expands. She's not replacing him yet, but she is, without realizing it, filling the emotional gap with something that gives her that stimulation, that uncertainty, that engagement that she's no longer finding in the relationship. He still hasn't said anything wrong. He still hasn't done anything wrong. But the emotional distance is already growing. Here is where the real turning point happens. And it happens not in a dramatic argument or a tearful confession. It happens in the way she starts to see him. Early in the relationship, he was a person she was still learning. Someone whose next move she didn't fully know. Someone who could still surprise her. That unknown quality made him interesting. Made him feel like someone worth pursuing emotionally. But now she knows exactly what he'll say before he says it. She knows how he'll respond to every situation. She knows his fears, his routines, his reactions. She knows him completely. And complete knowledge of a person, without continued growth or mystery, has a psychologically flattening effect on how we perceive them. He hasn't changed. That's actually part of the problem. Because people grow, shift, and evolve emotionally, and when a partner stops feeling like someone you're still discovering, the emotional pull toward them gradually softens. She doesn't sit down one day and consciously decide to pull away. It's more involuntary than that. One morning, she wakes up and realizes she doesn't feel the same urgency to reach out. She doesn't miss him the way she used to. The thought of seeing him is comfortable but not exciting. And comfort by itself is not enough to sustain attraction over time. This is the moment the relationship quietly begins its exit long before any conversation about it takes place. So what is actually happening here at a psychological level? There's a concept in behavioral psychology sometimes referred to as hedonic adaptation. It describes the human tendency to return to a baseline emotional state after any new experience, positive or negative. Things that once made us feel excitement, gratitude, or happiness gradually become normal. And once something feels normal, we stop responding to it emotionally. This is why the first bite of something delicious always tastes better than the 10th. This is why a raise at work feels incredible for about 2 weeks and then just becomes your new salary. And this is unfortunately why a person who shows up perfectly and consistently without variation, without mystery, without moments of emotional unpredictability eventually becomes part of the emotional background of someone's life, rather than the foreground. The nice guy made a fundamental psychological miscalculation. He believed that reliability was the foundation of attraction, and he was half right. Reliability is the foundation of trust. But trust and attraction are not the same thing. They can coexist, but they don't automatically produce each other. Attraction is maintained through a very different set of psychological conditions: novelty, challenge, emotional tension, personal depth, and the sense that you are still in the presence of someone you haven't completely figured out yet. The nice guy gave her everything, and in doing so, he left nothing for her imagination to hold on to. There was no mystery, no emotional tension, no part of him that felt like unfinished territory. And the human brain, especially in emotional and romantic contexts, is fundamentally drawn toward unfinished territory. This is not about playing games. This is not about being cold or withholding love. It's about understanding that emotional engagement requires stimulation. And stimulation, by its very nature, requires some degree of unpredictability. This pattern is not rare. It's not confined to certain types of people or certain kinds of relationships. It's one of the most quietly common emotional experiences in modern romantic life. And what makes it particularly painful is that it punishes the behavior we are explicitly told to practice. Be kind, be consistent, be available, be emotionally open, communicate clearly, show up. All of that is correct advice for maintaining trust and emotional safety in a long-term relationship. But somewhere along the way, many people began confusing emotional safety with emotional engagement. They are not the same experience. In modern relationships, emotional novelty has become increasingly rare. Routine sets in faster than ever. People are overstimulated by social media, constant entertainment, and an endless stream of new experiences. Against that backdrop, a relationship that feels predictable doesn't just feel boring, it starts to feel invisible. The person on the receiving end of all that reliability, they're not a bad person for feeling this way. They're not shallow or ungrateful. They're human. And human emotional systems were never designed for perfect, frictionless comfort. We were designed for pursuit, for discovery, for the experience of encountering something we don't fully understand yet and finding ourselves compelled to understand it better. When that experience stops existing inside a relationship, the emotional investment slowly shifts direction outward. She starts paying more attention to people around her who feel unresolved, people who challenge her thinking, people whose next words she can't predict, not because they're better than the nice guy, but because they activate something in her that the relationship no longer does. And when she finally meets someone or encounters something that makes her feel emotionally alive in the way she used to feel in the beginning, the comparison becomes impossible to ignore. It's not that the nice guy was replaced by someone better. It's that he was outpaced by someone who felt different. If you're watching this and feeling a familiar recognition somewhere inside your chest, that recognition is worth paying attention to. Because this pattern doesn't just happen to other people. It happens in relationships we've been in, relationships we've walked away from, relationships where we were the one who left or the one who was left. Ask yourself honestly, Have you ever been in a relationship where everything was fine but something was missing? Where the person was good to you, was present, was consistent, and yet, somehow, you felt a quiet emotional restlessness you couldn't explain? That restlessness was not a character flaw. It was not proof that you didn't care enough or that you were emotionally unavailable. It was the natural human response to a relationship that had traded emotional stimulation for emotional safety, without finding a way to sustain both. And if you've been on the other side, if you've been the reliable one, the consistent one, the one who gave everything they had and still watched someone slowly drift away, this is not a verdict on your worth. It is, however, a very important insight about how attraction actually functions over time. Loving someone fully, consistently, and openly is one of the most human things a person can do. But being fully known, fully predictable, and fully comfortable without also maintaining a sense of depth, personal evolution, and emotional aliveness can quietly extinguish the very fire you're trying to protect. The question isn't whether to be kind. The question is whether kindness alone is enough to keep someone emotionally invested in you over time. For most people, if they're honest with themselves, the answer is more complicated than they'd like it to be. Sit with these for a moment. At what point does emotional distance actually begin? Is it the moment someone starts to feel less? Or is it much earlier in the quiet moments they choose not to say something? And here's the deeper one. Do people ever truly leave suddenly, or do they always disappear emotionally first? And the leaving is just the last step in a process that began long before anyone noticed? The hardest truth about attraction is not that people are cruel or shallow or incapable of loyalty. The hardest truth is that human emotions are not static. They do not hold still. They move, and they move towards stimulation, growth, depth, and the experience of feeling genuinely alive in someone else's presence. The nice guy didn't lose because he was too kind. He lost because kindness, when it becomes completely predictable, stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like furniture. And no one falls in love with furniture. The lesson is not to be less kind. The lesson is to be more and more complex, more evolving, more present in your own growth, more quietly secure in your own identity. Because the most compelling version of a person is never the one who gives everything away in the first act. It's the one who, no matter how much time passes, still feels like there's more to discover.